Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed members of the Planning Board and valued community representatives, I welcome you all to this evening's assembly of the Saco Planning Board. As chair, it is my privilege to convene this gathering dedicated to the thoughtful planning and development of our community. Today, we come together with a shared commitment to shaping the future of our city in a manner that reflects our values, respects our heritage, and fulfills the needs of our residents both now and in the future. Our agenda tonight contains important matters, each requiring our careful consideration, expertise, and collaboration. As we engage in our deliberations, let us remember the profound impact these decisions will have on the lives of all, keeping in mind we're residents like you. It is our duty to maintain transparency, fairness, and inclusivity in our proceedings, ensuring that the voices of all are heard and respected. Together, we must embrace the responsibility entrusted to us by our community, working diligently and thoughtfully to chart a course that fosters growth, prosperity, and harmony. With that, I would like to call this meeting of this Tuesday, August 18th, 2026, Saco Planning Board to order. I look forward to the productive discussions and meaningful outcomes that lie ahead. Thank you. This evening with us, we have myself, Matt Provenzel, the chair of the board. We have, to my left, our vice chair, Joyce Leary-Clark, along with planning board members Jeff Brochu and Catherine Palini, and board members to my right, Jim Moyer and Chris Gagnon. Our staff members with us this evening are our city planner, Charles Tettleman, along with our compliance manager, Lisa Harmon, along with our Ward 7 City Council liaison, Nathan Johnson. And with that, we will move into our first item on our agenda, and this is the review of our August 11th, 2026 meeting minutes. Do board members have any questions, comments, or edits to that document?
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve the draft minutes.
I would second that.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion to accept the draft minutes as presented? All right, those in favor. Chris?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 6-0 to approve the minutes as drafted. Our next item on our agenda this evening is number 5, and this is our after-the-fact packet, but I do not believe we have a after-the-fact packet this evening. So we will move to item 6, our consent calendar. The only item on this agenda is 83 Jenkins Road. This is map 89, lots 32 and 32-1. And this is a application of completeness review for final subdivision and site plan for an 8-lot residential subdivision within the West Residential Zoning District. Board members have any questions, comments, edits, concerns on that item?
I do have, Chair, just one thing to clarify and correct in the memo. I don't think it affects the staff recommendation in it, is that the draft offers of session and deeds were not included in the application material. I misread them on the plan home, so that's my bad. We do have their HOA documents. I thought they were included in that, so that's just the only change. I've reached out to the applicant to get those in their application. They had requested for that as a condition of approval for the draft offers of session for street acceptance. I've said, no, I don't want that as a condition of approval. If you guys can get that to us, doesn't seem like there. So I've asked for it, but everything else is the same.
Okay, thank you.
And then if you guys would also want to discuss another site walk for this, that's up to you, but you do have the option at application completeness as well.
All right, great. Thank you for the clarity. Any thoughts or questions for staff?
I guess, Mr. Chair, my only thought is I personally don't think we need another site walk since we had a pretty thorough site walk previously.
Sure, thank you. Any other thoughts from board members? I would agree with that.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve the consent item agenda regarding 83 Jenkins Road.
Thank you for the motion, Jim.
I would second that.
Second by Jeff, thank you. Any additional discussion on the motion to approve the consent item calendar item as presented, excuse me? Any additional discussion? All right. Those in favor, Chris?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 6-0. All right, our next item on our agenda this evening, number 7, this is our Planning Board Public Hearing Guidelines. This is a document developed by the board and city staff outlining the procedure in place for our public hearings held. This explains the purpose of the public hearings and the outlined procedure of reviewing an application, public comment presentation, and meeting duration. This is a document typically found at the rear of the auditorium in a hard copy form along with digital versions online on the city's website. If anyone has any questions on that document, please let us know and we'll do our best to answer those questions. Continuing along, number 8 on our agenda is our public comment period. Our public comment period is an opportunity to hear from members of the public. We limit this agenda item to a total of 15 minutes for items or topics not under planning board review. The planning board appreciates public comment and recognizes that public comment about matters before it can help the board understand neighborhood concerns, review an application, or help understand additional items. Those wishing to make statements about an application currently under planning board's review are asked to provide those statements during the applicable public hearing period. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. However, if there are multiple members of the public looking to speak, we may reduce that time per person to accommodate all speakers. So if anyone is with us this evening that would like to speak about general planning items, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. And just jumping down for a moment here, if I could, if it looks like we do have item 9A on our agenda this evening is looking to be requested to be tabled. So if anyone is here on that item, it looks like we'll take that up another evening. But again, if anyone is here for public comment period, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, and we will collect comments and address them accordingly.
Hi, good evening. Inga Brown, 161 Simpson Road. I looked at an earlier agenda, so I'm a little unclear right now. If I want to speak on D, Ricker Road, the application completeness review, will there be opportunity for the public to speak during that? I don't think there usually is.
There will be, but I don't believe that one is scheduled for a public hearing this evening. Is that correct?
That is, I can address it after the public comment.
Okay, so that is, as long as it's not specific to that application, we'd love to hear comments. We just want to make sure that a notice public hearing for everybody.
Correct, but the way it's listed, I guess, under 9, these are all public hearings, A, B, C, and D, but that was not how it was listed on an earlier agenda. So should I speak on this item now, or should I wait?
I think
I'm going to clarify this.
Sure.
Agendas are sent out on Fridays. You may have been looking at that website as we were building the agenda.
Yes.
So the only agendas are posted Fridays when we send it out via e-notification. So if you're looking at that before, that's just an open link. We kind of use that just for planning purposes to do that. For your item about application review and public hearings, Application review includes application completeness review. So if the item is accepted as application completeness review by the planning board, they can schedule a public hearing, and at that time, you can provide public hearing on the item. Yeah.
It looks like in the materials, the public hearing on that item is now preliminarily scheduled for September 15th.
There has been, if the application is
Correct.
found complete, it will be scheduled by the planning board, and staff provided a recommendation in there, but there is no public hearing scheduled at this time.
Okay. So to clarify, 'cause lots going on here, Chair, you're saying I could make some general comments?
Sure, and we did receive your, we have some comments from you as well.
Not on this item. Or maybe there is, I don't know.
I think we do have.
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
We
Yes,
do,
correct.
we do have some comments in our packet
Correct.
from you as well.
Okay. So I think, if appropriate, I'm going to make some general comments.
Sure, yes, please.
Okay, thank you. So one of my general comments would be concerning the Ricker Road application for contract zone. The staff memo says that the petition was notified to abutters in 400 feet range, and according to my understanding, unless I'm wrong, in the rural conservation zone, the abutter notification is 600 feet, and the red line version of the contract zone revision ordinance is 800 feet. So right now it stands at 600 feet. So I want to just ensure that abutters were appropriately notified, and if that is not the case, then I would ask you to table this item because the application completeness should not move forward if abutters were not appropriately notified. So that's a general comment. Another general comment is the applicant has a cover letter, and in the cover letter on page 3, they list the permitted uses in the rural conservation zone. They list 6 uses that are permitted: hospitals, commercial processing of wood, composting centers, schools that are commercial, and commercial solar energy systems and high voltage transmission lines. And then they refer everyone to the table. And those are not permitted uses in the rural conservation zone. Those are conditional uses. I checked the table. So just a general comment that the applicant's letter, unless I am incorrect, is citing some uses that are not permitted on which they are building their application. So I think there might be some confusion around that. I'd also like just to point out that all pre-2021 contract zones are null and void, and so because of the repeal, incidental repeal by the council, so the applicant's general evidence citing other contract zones in the rural conservation zone for cell phone towers, some of them were contract zones, some of them were non-conforming uses. All of those projects are now non-conforming legal uses. So to build a case for a contract zone by citing other examples that are repealed and no longer valid, I think is noteworthy. And then lastly, my very general comment, thank you for your patience. I do have a letter submitted tonight that I have continued concern that is documented around Saco's past history on contract zones. And I will be transparent that I was very surprised to see a new contract zone come before council and then come to you for some initial review before it goes back to council. And I know my letter was perhaps a little lengthy, but let me be clear. Saco's current contract zone ordinance is out of compliance with state contract zone law. And that is known to the staff, that is known to many members of the council. And so just to keep it as simple as possible, Saco's contract zone ordinance is now less restrictive than the state statute Title 30-A, Section 4352. And I know that I believe the city planner and the assistant city administrator, Ms. Cole Prescott, are aware of this discrepancy. The red line version of the contract zone revision ordinance has a red line version where it is corrected. I want to commend staff that the contract zone application in your packet does, in fact, reflect the state statute with its more restrictive language, so that's good. But our contract zone ordinance for Saco on the books is less restrictive, and I find that troubling that we're moving forward with a new contract zone application when we have not, for the past 2 years, amended and improved and brought our own contract zone ordinance into compliance with state law. So that concerns me. I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Chair, I would just say, at least on the notices, our contract zone ordinance does not have any application for the contract zone, does not require any notice of receipt for it. That's more of a courtesy receipt of application that we sent to abutters within 400 feet. There's no requirement for that in our contract zone. The only notification that's required is 600 feet for a public hearing, which has yet to be scheduled. That's the only factual thing I'll make there.
Okay, thank you for the clarity. All right, continuing along this evening, we will move to item 9 of our agenda. This is our planning applications and public hearings under review this evening. Item A within this heading is 530 Ferry Road, map 4, lot 28. And this is a public hearing and application review for a private roadway off of Ferry Road in the low-density residential zoning district. And this item, Charles, has been requested to be tabled until our September 15th meeting.
Yeah, and at this time, I would ask the planning board to table this indefinitely. We have not received an application submission for the September 15th meeting, and I don't have an indication of when the application would be ready to come back. And so in fairness of the members of the public, we would ask to table this indefinitely so that when it does come back to the planning board, we can renotice the project rather than just continuing tabling it. So I would ask for the planning board just to table this indefinitely. When we receive a complete application, we will schedule it and put it back in our planning board queue, which we would renotice as well. And that's, notices are paid for by the applicant. So I think that's just the best way to go forward rather than delaying it another meeting, but happy to chat more about it.
Great, thank you, sir. Any questions for staff?
So we should make a motion to that effect?
Yes, please.
I would move to table the application for 530 Ferry Road indefinitely.
Second.
Any additional discussion? Jeff?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thanks. I just want to make sure, obviously, I don't know the backside of the conversation with the applicant, but if it's been noticed and stuff, and they are just a couple weeks away, wouldn't it be more appropriate that we, out of courtesy, just table it till the 15th, September 15th, and then if he hasn't produced anything, then we table indefinitely to save the cost of continued notification on the applicant?
So this tonight wasn't noticed. This is a continued public hearing. And so we could table it to the 15th, but they haven't submitted in time. So they've now missed the application deadline, which we set in the planning board guide, in the planning board SOP, which would be August 14th. So I was hoping that I would get in Monday morning and have it in my inbox and, count that as submitted, but they're not ready. They're still working on a few documents for it. So I think it's just better to, whenever they get their application in, and it's also taking up spots on future agendas as well. So I think it's just a better way to just say, when it's ready, the planning staff will renotice it, send it out to the abutters, and it just gives everyone who's interested more chance to follow it closely, or better chance, rather.
All right, thank you for the clarity. Any other thoughts from board members, questions? All right, motion by Joyce and second by Jim to table this item indefinitely until until staff receives completed application documents. Those in favor, Chris?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
No.
Catherine?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-1. All right, our next item, item 9B. This is 986 Portland Road. This is Phase 2 of MAP 63, Lot 3-1, and this is a continued application of completeness review and a public hearing and an application review this evening. And this is for preliminary subdivision, site plan, and conditional use review for the development of 126 dwelling units within 8 buildings and the creation of a commercial outparcel along Portland Road and a 1 megawatt solar array. And this is all within the Portland Road zoning district. Anything to add on this item, Charles, before we begin?
No, just for some background to catch everybody up. And back in January and February, we received applications for 986 Portland Phase 1, which was an amendment to the original plan for the Merrill Drive houses that are now built for a 3-lot subdivision. They also, at the same time, submitted their Phase 2 application. During the Phase 1 review, there were some pretty significant concerns about the wetland delineation, if you remember. So while we were talking about that, we figured that we would pause on, or the applicant requested that we pause on the review of 986, the Phase 2 of it, finish the Phase 1. I think it's more of an enabling subdivision anyway, so that they can go forward with the Phase 2 development. So it's now back in front of us for application completeness. We did schedule a public hearing tonight as well, just because we were unsure of the status of the application completeness when we went to notice it, but we confirmed that the planning board never voted for application completeness, so that would have to happen first before we go to the public hearing. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Any questions for staff before we begin? Any conflicts or disclosures on this item? Jim?
Charles, there's a number of items, more information requested, MIR. How important are those for completeness for this application?
Some of these are more clerical, just updating like impervious coverage numbers, building coverage, making sure some of the application material reflect the previously approved subdivision. Because they were submitted at the same time, it's more of just a clerical cleanup, so I don't think those are crazy. There's some, just looking for updated documents, but generally I think they're all small pieces of it. While it's not, if we didn't have it, I would put not in there, but it's more of just a clerical cleanup of the application.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
As you can see on the plans, my mom's estate is an abutter to this property as it was to the previous development next to Aquabogden, which I can't remember the name of. Just putting that out there, I don't think it's an issue. It abuts backland, not
Sure.
road frontage.
Great, thank you for the reminder, Joyce. Board members, any concerns with Joyce participating? Great. Thank you, Joyce. All right, with that, we will turn it over to the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Tony Panciocco. I'm with Teradyne Consultants, the firm that has been working on this project for quite some time now. Probably the easiest thing to do is maybe to give you a little update on where all our permitting stands. As mentioned, it was originally submitted back in December of 25, was then put on hold for the amended subdivision plan, which was approved and signed off and recorded. Throughout that process, we've been working with the different agencies for permitting. We did get review comments from back in 2025 from Acorn Engineering on the stormwater type stuff. We also had DPW comments, landscaping comments, lighting comments. We've addressed all those comments, and responses and a modified plan should be in the current packets that you have. Since then, we received another round of comments from Wright Pierce and DPW. I don't know if you've switched peer reviewers, but that kind of seems what happened. We've also got signed off on landscape and lighting comments. We've resubmitted to Army Corps. We're waiting to hear from them. We don't really have a schedule from them. We've also updated our applications with DEP, and I think we're close to getting an approval from them, but we're still waiting on additional comments. We did have some issues, as mentioned, that came up in the review package in terms of needing more information, and some of those actually are in the latest DPW review comment. Some of them are some solar issues, which I think Charles and I will have to work out as we move forward. And that's kind of it. It's been reviewed more than once, and I think it's complete, and that's basically what we're trying to do is get the complete list completed tonight, and then we can, and in the next couple of weeks, we'll have another round of review comments coming back to the city, as well as updated plans to address the latest rounds of comments. And then we'll obviously move forward from there. So I guess with that, if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to help.
Great, thank you. Board members, any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chair, I had a question about the waiver for financial guarantees for removal of the solar array. The rules say that there has to be a financial guarantee equal to 150% of the estimated removal costs. And the applicant's response is, we own it, we're not planning on removing it. Well, I would think any solar array might be removed at some point. Can you explain what you mean by that? They do.
I also meant to add this at the top as well. One thing that happened as we were reviewing this memo, so when we initially, and you'll see this reflected at the top of the memo, that the proposed use is 246 multifamily residential and small-scale energy facilities. When I was talking with other city staff, when I was back in December, so still new, I can still play that card, I think. We were reviewing this as a small-scale energy facility, mostly because it was accessory. So when we think about solar accessory projects to residential, we're looking at really small installations, less than 2,000 square feet. I wasn't aware that there was that 2,000 square foot maximum until I was really diving into it on Thursday and Friday when I was writing this memo. So after talking with code, we're most likely going to have to review this as a commercial solar project. I did reach out to our attorney just for a clarification, because this is accessory to residential. It's not commercial, but it meets the commercial intent of our ordinance. So we don't have a firm answer of which type of solar use it is. So throughout the completeness memo, I referenced that this might not be necessary if it's accessory and small scale. But if we go to our legal and the use is determined to be commercial solar, then it would have to meet Chapter 180, which is our commercial solar ordinance. So that's just some background that doesn't speak to the waiver, but before I went in there, I just want to clarify that that is the one piece that is still a little bit of a mystery to me. Most likely, it's going to be subject to Chapter 180, the commercial solar ordinance, and I believe the applicant's application speaks to that, so that would be Chapter 180, commercial solar, as well as 230-722, the performance standard for commercial solar, and I think they're pretty much the same. But my interpretation at the time of posting this was this small-scale accessory. Most likely, it will be commercial, just because of that square foot limit, but that's the other thing I wanted to add at the beginning. But that doesn't answer the waiver question, so I'll let you respond to that.
Yeah, in terms of the waiver, I'd have to go back and check with the applicant on that, and double check with the solar people as well, especially now that we're kind of on that fine line of small scale. I guess it's not a fine line, but this is the purpose of the solar is to provide energy for the development. It's not intended as a, shall we say, off-grid solar field that's going to then feed a substation and feed, the general public. And I think if you look in your packets, we had an initial question about solar. I think it was from the town engineer regarding how it was going to tie into the grid. And we contacted solar, and they basically came back and said it's similar to what you would do for your house, but on a larger scale. It will feed the development. If there's excess, it'll go back into the grid. If they're short, for whatever reason, it'll bring power back in from the grid. So it's not a solar farm, but I mean, I guess we need to work through that definition as we move forward through the permitting.
Sure. So, Charles, the waiver is not relevant to an application of completeness item, so that's something we can discuss later and throughout the project, correct?
I would say here, no, it's not relevant, but it could be relevant if you don't have the necessary documents to make a decision on that waiver. So that would be if the board needed more information. For the solar, there are specific requirements for small-scale solar for submission, but because of that, I wouldn't put that on the applicant just yet. But I feel like this is a big piece. Our financial guarantee in general is 150%, but for commercial solar, it is that there is a decommissioning plan. So I think it's a little bit larger than an application completeness, but also because I've been categorizing it wrong, I wouldn't want that to be, weighed against the applicant.
Sure, and then, well, that moves to the second part of my question, is it's a zoning requirement for financial guarantee. Is that something the board can even waive?
I would say not looking at the ordinance right now. If it says the planning board may waive, then yes. If it doesn't, then no, would be my general guidance. Okay. Assuming that it's a requirement for it, I would say no, that it would be a requirement and not something that would be able to be waived. But I would have to look at the ordinance in more depth.
I don't see that in there, but that's when it comes to zoning requirements and financial guarantees, I just always want to quadruple check here, but, okay. Any other thoughts or questions from board members on application completeness? Catherine?
I have a question in the Public Works memo. Number 1 talks about, will this exceed the maximum dead end street length due to the Apple Tree Lane locked gate? Have you talked to them about that? Was there a resolution?
I wasn't involved, but I know there was multiple discussions between Public Works, the fire department, the abutters, I believe, on Apple Tree Lane. And the request was that emergency access be gated, especially so that doesn't become a cut-through from Route 1 to Apple Tree Lane to Flag Pond Road. So, I mean, we've been following the direction of the Public Works, fire department, et cetera, to gate that access. I mean, obviously, emergency services will have full access to it because it does have a Knox box on it with a key and a gate, and it's not in that package, but in the next package, we've got details of that gate with the Knox box. And I have sent all that over to the fire chief, and he has signed off on that. And that, again, will be in the next package. And I additionally sent him a turning exhibit with fire hydrant locations like we typically do for all these projects, so that he can make sure he can maneuver around the site.
Great, thank you. Any other?
Will they need a waiver then if it changes based on the lock gate?
It may, I guess we could say it may, but I see where the road's designed and it's going to be offered for city acceptance, and it's just a gate that the board, that's part of our review.
Okay.
The board, we could say we don't support the gate. We could go against DPW and emergency services and say we don't think the gate is appropriate.
Okay.
You can physically go through it less the gate, so I don't
Right.
really see it as a dead end. But
Can I just clarify one thing?
yes, please.
That's not going to be petitioned to be a public road. It's an access easement driveway up till Apple Tree Lane.
Oh, that portion, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for the clarity. So that portion that we're seeing there, that's an easement portion. Okay, thank you for the clarity. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I too kind of picked up, I was really started on the small energy solar, and when I was reading the small energy solar, I don't think there's anything about it that really complies. My understanding of these 126 units for Phase B, are they all going to have individual electric meters billed to the units, or are you guys paying for that, and is that just provided as part of the rental?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I know utilities are included, so I would assume that they wouldn't have individual meters, but I'd have to verify that for you. I don't know for sure.
Because I think that would help clarify some of the commercial use in our zoning ordinance 230-726. Then obviously the size of the array is just, extremely large. I don't think it really meets what was intended for small scale. So I too am a little bit worried about finding application complete when we also need to include a commercial solar application for this. So that's one of my concerns. I didn't see, touching on the road that Catherine brought up, they were requesting private maintenance agreements and plan for the road. I didn't see it. I didn't look super hard, but I think that needs to kind of be included if we're going to be looking at maintaining this as a private way. There was a request for open space, and I guess this one's not as important for completeness, but the open space calculation, and more importantly, applicants often don't give us the active recreation space. What are you doing to provide, and how is it going to be maintained as active recreation space on the plan? That's something that I think oftentimes gets overlooked. One of our requirements was the neighborhood meeting minutes and notes, or notes and minutes. There was nothing noted, other than that there was one scheduled here at 5 o'clock on a date, but there was nothing recorded from that.
Right, and we just picked up those comments from the package on Friday, so we're working through those as well.
Okay. So I guess there's a couple bigger items that I feel like maybe is not complete. I also kind of feel if staff was kind of under the impression that they didn't need it, that makes it a little harder to decide for me, but I think this is a pretty big overlook, or a pretty big change for a solar array, and in fairness to all the solar arrays that have come before us, they should be providing the same sort of documentation to be found complete. I also, and then the impervious coverage calculation DPW called out, and I mean, we've seen this several times. I would have thought that was pretty nailed down at this point.
Again, that was comments that came up after we submitted for this, and so that has been added to the plans, as well as we're starting to go through and do the open space calc. But what we submitted in your package was prior to receiving the second round of comments, which we received 2 weeks ago. So yes, so that stuff is definitely outstanding on what you have, but we're working through that.
That's all I had, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Any other thoughts? Joyce?
Just one quick one. There was a comment from Public Works about the, and this may not be an application completeness thing, but it talks about easements, identifying who's being granted the easement. Do you have any information about the trail that runs across the property and who would be, is the developer granting an easement to some entity for that trail?
I'm not entirely sure if that would be a specific easement or kind of a blanket easement for people to use to walk through. I know there was some comment there also about easements for the stormwater pond, but the applicant owns all the lots, so, and will retain ownership of all those. So he doesn't need to, he really can't give himself an easement between lots on that type of stuff. But in terms of the existing trails and the trails that we're adding, I'm not sure. It most likely would probably be some type of blanket easement that says, you know, residents have the right to walk and use these trails.
So it wouldn't necessarily be something open to the public. It's an amenity for the resident.
At this point, I'm not entirely sure, but that's the way I would read it, yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Joyce. Chris?
Yes, I just would like to say that I too am concerned about the solar. I also don't think, or I don't see how it would not be considered commercial solar project, especially with the size. Even if all the panels were on each individual building had its own metering and everything, just to the scale alone, I just think would warrant it. Where it's its own separate thing, even though it is planned to provide power to these units, it could easily produce far more power than these units would need, and then that power would be sold back to the grid. It seems like would be the case. So to my eye, I think we would need more paperwork to represent that. Also, the access road going to the solar farm, will that be gated? Will there be fences, that sort of stuff?
That's fenced and gated.
Okay. And I'm assuming that also won't be open for city acceptance. That's just going to be a
Correct.
easement road.
Yeah, there's an 8-foot chain link fence with a double swing gate to get on it, to get access to it. And then I think there's a walking path around the outside of the fence. So people want to.
Perfect. I personally, with the other road where it connects to Applegate, I agree with the chair that, to me, it doesn't seem like that would make it a dead end, because emergency vehicles have access, which it would be a big factor in my eyes. Obviously, if there's a fire or something like that, you don't want people to have to drive way out of the way. Other than that, those are the only comments I have at the moment.
Great, thank you, Chris. Catherine?
I had one more comment, which is not part of completeness, but maybe to look at for future plans. The playground being next to the electrical location and also pretty far away from the houses, have you considered it moving it closer in case kids are sort of going there by themselves? Like, it's pretty far from most of the buildings, and also just right next to that electrical, which I saw there was a Public Works change, like maybe it was access through it before, but.
Yeah, it's been reconfigured so that you don't walk kind of through where the electrical is to get to the playground. Now they're separated. And, you know, they're both fenced in as well, so. You know, we could try to look and see where we could fit it in somewhere else, but like the majority of the middle of that site is roadway and buildings. It doesn't allow for a lot of room, except on the outskirts, kind of, to tuck
Okay.
that in.
I just think of kids going there on their own, going all the way down Merrill Drive, but, okay, if you've looked at other places, thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Any other thoughts? Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Jeff and Chris. I'm looking at the statute or our ordinance regarding submission requirements for commercial solar, and they seem pretty detailed, and we don't have that information right now, and it would seem like we should have that information for application completeness. I can understand Charles's comments about some of the information that's missing is relatively minor in scope and can be fixed, but I think the commercial solar submissions are, I think it's under section 722 G. They're pretty detailed, so I don't think application completeness is met tonight.
Great, thank you, Jim. Any other thoughts from board members?
I would just jump in and say, we do have the applicant here tonight, so even though it's feeling like we're going to application completeness, if you have more comments for the applicant on it, because we've already gone beyond application completeness anyway. So in the interest of the applicant's time, because essentially, the only thing we would be changing here is opening the public hearing, which we'll have to renotice now. So while we do have the applicant here, if you guys do have anything else in this, and again, I'll apologize to Tony on this. That was just staff miscommunication on what that would be. But we have reached out to an attorney just to clarify, but the direction is, but we also will, we won't, it's not like we don't have it, but it's that's my fault, so I apologize for that. But while we have the applicant here, if you guys do have any other thoughts, I know you've already gotten a lot of thoughts, so I want to make sure that this isn't just a wasted evening.
Sure, thank you, Charles. I do share the same concerns. I mean, if it's a commercial solar array, we need to get that documented correctly and appropriately, of course. So with that overall, without trying to site plan it and jump the gun here, we do have it is scheduled as a public hearing. It has been noticed, as you mentioned, Charles. So maybe briefly, a few items I think would help the applicant as well. The big one for me, Catherine started to bring it up, was the gate and the road length, and I'm trying to understand the gate at Apple Tree. I don't quite understand why the gate, when the board and Saco, when we tried to create so much connectivity between sites, and then we have one here and we're going to put a gate on it to try to not make it a cut through. But I think obviously we don't want Saco as a racetrack. It's not a city racetrack, but I think the design of this area, it's not like it's a highway thoroughfare here. So I guess I'm not following why the gate.
I was not involved in those discussions.
Sure.
Beginning of the project. But I certainly can go back to the people who were involved and see whether we have meeting minutes, sorry, backwards there. And, and maybe we need to do another CDRC meeting.
Perhaps, sure, yeah.
They wanted it gated, I guess, is my only answer right now at this point.
That also may be something in the TMP as well. So again, there is a traffic movement permit here. So I can go in and check what that traffic review, because that may be stemming from there. That would be my guess, because that is controlling the flow of traffic, and because there was other stuff proposed that could be a consideration of this. So that could be a state requirement through the TMP.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to, that would be my request in my direction. We've had large projects in the past with less units that don't have a gate on it. So I couldn't imagine that other project, if we gated one end of it, it just doesn't make sense to me. So that's, I think overall, that's my biggest item. There's a lot here to digest, but you're working on comments from our third-party reviewers. You're being responsive there. I think that's good. We're going through them. We have the solar away. I think that renewable energy is great. I think getting the correct application and process included is important, of course. I think that overall for me is the biggest item that is jumping out at me to take a look at and review, not taking away anything from our other board members that they've said as well, but that for me, in addition to those comments, are sort of a big one. But any other board members' thoughts, Joyce?
Well, I guess I'm wondering too, just the direction of a dead-end street, does putting up a gate, even though emergency vehicles can get through, does that make this a dead-end street, which causes different issues? But to answer your question about why the gate, as I recall, the people on Apple Tree Lane and some of the other people on Flag Pond Road wanted the gate because they were worried about 100 some odd residents exiting out onto Flag Pond Road. I mean, not necessarily people coming through from Route 1, but I believe they were talking about many of the residents of Phase 2 might decide to exit out that way. So I think it was objections from the neighborhood primarily. But I would like the answer to the question of, does adding the gate turn this into a dead-end street?
Sure.
And I'm not sure we're asking the applicant that question or staff that question. I assume Public Works has the answer.
I would say yes to TMP, staff, and, previous review. A lot of this has happened before I started, so I don't have a good grasp of to why, but we can look into it, and I'm sure we can find a resolution.
Sure. Yeah, I think to the applicant's note, it's from when it started and maybe the initial discussions and, what's transpired since then, just in the city and conversations I've had. Yeah, I guess I don't think I've really supported the idea of a gate there, but anyway. Any other thoughts from board members? Questions, concerns? Chris?
Along with that connection to Applegate, part of the ordinance is for interior sidewalks and stuff like that. Should there be one on that road to connect to Applegate so that even if there is a gate, you could at least walk through to other parts of the development?
Well, I mean, I think if it's gated, people are going to know it's not a cut-through, so you could just walk down the road. Because there are sidewalks, throughout the development. They just end where there's no more access, really, to, if you were walking your dog, you could duck under the gate and walk down the road.
Yeah, I was just, general feedback type of deal.
Right.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, if we're gonna, I guess, if we can have that resolved more, that's my, try not to site plan it and have this whole big, long, lengthy conversation, other than there's there's a lot for me to go over with it, with that gate, with the gates there or not, and then expanding upon it from there. But I think that's the primary question. Because it's, if it's a hard from, from life safety and fire and DPW, yes, we have it, then I have a bunch of other thoughts. I have thoughts on it. If it's doesn't need to be there, then I have different set of thoughts. So, yeah. Jeff?
Well, I too echo some of that, and I'm just having a harder time because we're not offering it up for city acceptance, right?
Correct.
And it's being retained as private. That's why we need the comment for the road maintenance agreement. Chris brings up a very valid point about walkability and connectivity, because if that changes in 10 years, 15 years, then we end up with, like, the Hillview Heights. We have a beautiful neighborhood that many sections don't have sidewalks. It wasn't part of the ordinance, or they said, oh, it's not going anywhere. And then we're left with the burden, again, how do we deal with it? So getting some clarification on if it's exceeding the length of the dead-end street is very important. I can see both sides of this conversation where the neighbors don't want the cut-through because of the traffic, but also for emergency services purposes, kind of like the idea of the gate, it not being a gate, so residents could exit very quickly if they needed to. What benefit is there to have 200-plus units and some sort of a uneventful issue going on the Route 1 entrance side, and they can't exit, they can't get anywhere, they're piling up at a gate. So there's a couple pieces.
Right, we've had similar projects, like, again, with less units, that we, in probably a little bit smaller footprint, that we required 2 exits. We needed the thoroughfare, we needed that through, and here we have more units and at least as long a road, I'm sure, and then we have a gate at the.
I guess I understand the concerns, but I also feel like this issue was already resolved. Kind of when we were told to put the gate there.
Yeah, there's been back and
that's-
forth, but that's
That's the clarification we're providing, and I think what I'm hearing from the planning board is, if it's required, give us the reason why so we can all understand. If it's not required, then it's not resolved. So we can look into that. I think that's a really simple, we can backtrack. I think we're both, newly assigned to this project, so we can look into the history of that, no problem, and then what does that mean from there? I think I hear the concerns about dead-end streets, safety and emergency access for everyone. So I think there's a lot to clarify there, and we can clarify that. That's not a huge lift.
Sure. As a board member, I have a problem with the lack of consistency on this one. That's all. That's sort of my big question. I know it's not your fault or Charles' fault. It's just how this has developed. That's all. Okay.
Yeah.
Joyce?
And I think, thanks for the reminder that it's a private road, so we're not, we're not looking at the city plowing another dead-end street. This is
Makes sense.
private,
Sure, that.
and it's worth reminding us of that, so thank you.
And Merrill Drive remains private throughout.
Correct.
Street and Merrill Drive, private. Okay.
Correct. It's basically an access easement. There's not a right-of-way through there. It starts as a 50-foot easement, then transitions to a 40-foot for Phase 2. There's a short, at the beginning of the road, there's about a 200-foot extension of the right-of-way off Route 1 that provides frontage.
And Merrill Drive has been constructed to meet city standards if it were to ever, no.
No, it's close, but not, there's a couple comments in there from Public Works that it doesn't exactly meet the private road standard.
Doesn't meet the private road standard. So as is designed now, it could never be offered for city acceptance.
I believe so, yes.
So maybe that's the rationale behind it. Don't know if I still agree with the gate, but that could explain the thought process behind it, so, okay. Sure.
I guess Mr. Chair, if I may, I would need more clarification because there was talk of a commercial outlot, but then we're talking about the developer is planning on retaining all ownership for the road agreement. I guess I just need a little bit more clarity because I thought the commercial outlot was the frontage lot on Route 1.
That is correct.
Right? So then this whole Merrill Drive roadway agreement, are we only talking about a roadway maintenance agreement for the first 224 feet? Or are we talking about the entire parcel? Because when we start talking about solar energy and it being offered up, that starts to raise questions on ownership and maintenance and then decommissioning, that decommissioning plan, all of those things tie together and how that's going to be retained, and is that a condition of approval of some type that it's always going to be offered as one parcel, not multiple lots?
So just,
I think,
just to clarify, the Phase 1 subdivision amendment you guys approved back in June established that entrance, this portion of Merrill Drive, as a to be accepted. So it needs to be updated and changed based on that approval. That work has not been completed. So it is still part of the Merrill Drive that's private. And I believe the rest of the road is what's to be private. I think the cross easements that we're looking at are for the, I'll zoom out for the whole subdivision again, is between, these lots here and the front lot, because it is all one subdivision. Even if those lots are under common ownership, the commercial parcel could be sold, we would need easements between those lots. And even if they are easements to each other, it's when, at the time that those, or designated successors, et cetera, legal language. But we also have, like, this part of Lot 1, just to remind people, goes all the way around here, just to do this. So this is all Lot 1. That's not a great color, but all up here, that's also not big enough. But there, and then this is lot, and this is Lot 2. So those are the three lots when we look at cross easements just between those lots. I think there's different words about maintenance and stuff, or like the understanding how the solar and the residential are going to be maintained and owned, how the roadway, I think there's a lot, it's the same word, maintenance and operations, but it's for a bunch of different things. So how does the whole subdivision function together? How does the solar and the residential function together? I think those are all the clarifying questions that I'm hearing from the planning board, and I think they're all valid points to come across, but they're all a little bit different in terms of, like, the solar and the residential are under the same ownership, and then the remaining residential and the commercial out parcel are all under the same ownership, but they're separate lots. So I think just we can clarify that in the narrative, understand how they're all going to work together, and the requirements, especially as it relates to, solar, roadway stuff, and that. So there's that's the private roadway maintenance, and there's stormwater maintenance agreements. So there's a lot of maintenance agreements. So we'll try to clarify, and I can try to be more specific in future review memos.
Sure. And then, Tony, my last question, that portion of Apple Tree, is it being constructed to the same standard as the rest of Merrill?
the connector piece,
Yes.
it's narrower, and there's no sidewalk.
Narrower, no
But
sidewalk.
the base is the same, so
Base
that you
detail's the
can
same.
run a fire truck on it without getting stuck or rutting the pavement.
Okay. I guess that's still getting hung up on the significance of why is that portion different? Why are we treating it different? That's all. And I understand the private drive and the construction, so, okay. Going a bit of a circle here, but any other thoughts from board members? So, Jeff?
I was just wondering, do we have dates? I mean, if we decide not to accept as complete, does the applicant think that they could turn this around for the September 15th? Or do we have, and staff, I mean, do we think we could come to a meeting and we can make it part of our motion to get them back on the agenda?
That's a good question. I don't know. I guess it's kind of depend on how the whole solar thing plays out. Right now, you've sent that off to Corporation Counsel to review, right?
Yeah, I sent out to our city solicitors. But we can chat more about, what that specifically thing. I think my perspective, and again, not the final legal advice, but I agree with the planning board that will most likely be commercial solar on a, reading of it. So we would need those submission requirements. So hypothetically, I think the question is how quickly could you turn those around? I don't know how long it would take your team to develop a.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to check, we'd have to obviously reconnect with the solar people and go through through those requirements, if indeed it is deemed commercial. So I don't have an answer for that, I guess.
Well, could we, it seems like the board feels that way as far as the application completeness is, can we keep that 15th deadline and at least or meeting date, continue, table and continue till then, and at least by the 15th we'll know, or we can make an adjustment by then, or we have the application here, we have good conversation, direction, input, and a little bit of traction here, so I want to try to not lose traction on it, but still be realistic in the work that needs to, the applicant has performed.
Personally, I wouldn't want to put a date to it right now. I think the applicant has a bunch of comments from city staff, our third-party reviewers, the planning board, and no answer on the solar. So I think those are pretty substantial. We can get a pretty significant resubmission as well. I wouldn't want to put a date on it at this point, and I would probably just ask to table it indefinitely, that planning staff can bring it back. I think that's just the easiest way, rather than rush to get things completed. I don't want to say, we don't know what is required or how long it will take at this time. But also the applicant has already undergone pretty significant review for this project. And we've had a good conversation here tonight. So I would be open to doing that. We could shoot for honestly, we could shoot for September 1st, September 15th. I just don't know if those are plausible. Because I wouldn't put this for further review until we got a full resubmission.
Sure.
And I would probably bring it back on the consent calendar if you guys tabled it indefinitely. So 'cause we've done that first round of review, so we'd be waiting for a resubmission anyway at this point.
Sure, but if we table it, I'd like to do the public hearing and continue the whole
If you don't accept it, there will be no public hearing.
Correct, but at our next meeting, in lieu of a consent item to review, I mean, I guess we could
Right, it would be-
consent item the application of completeness, and then a different agenda item would be to review. I guess it doesn't all have to be under one heading. I just want to make sure that when the applicant comes back to us, we do have a public hearing for it.
Yeah,
That's my
I
goal.
don't think that'd be September 1st, but, so you're looking to continue the public hearing. I don't know if you could take action on the public hearing technically, we did schedule it. I say we can just,
Yeah, no, I understand your point
tricky.
there. I just want to make sure that when the applicant does come back, that it is a public hearing.
yeah.
You can work through the
Yeah, oh, yeah,
semantics of that, but as
that's
long
easy,
as when the applicant comes back, it is scheduled for a public hearing as well.
Yes,
However
yeah.
we do that.
It would be the same thing like tonight,
Okay.
where we would notice the application, do application completeness first, and if it's accepted, then you could open the public hearing.
Okay. Any other thoughts from board members? Okay.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, I'll move that we find the application not complete and table the 986 Portland Road application, Phase 2, indefinitely.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Chris. Any additional discussion, Jeff?
I don't know, I mean, I feel like this applicant has done a ton of work. They are really close, and I just feel like the indefinite piece, and I guess maybe I'm not understanding the logistics, I feel like giving them a holder to let them come back. And yes, if legal comes back and says it's definitely commercial, and the applicant, then has to deal with it, and if he wants to say, okay, let's table, he can withdraw. Let's give him that option, is kind of my feeling. There's a lot of things about the solar that is definitely commercial in my mind, but they might come up with a creative plan and swing it around. They've done a lot. I mean, just from even our previous review for the site plan amendment. So I just would rather give them a holder, a placeholder. Maybe it's the 15th, that's enough time, and if they feel like they can't make it, then let them pull back.
So if we, given that this application has already had a significant review, I wouldn't bring it to a public hearing until we do another round review anyway, because we've already had comments, the applicant has them. If it came back for this, we would just be talking about the gate for another 15 minutes, 20 minutes. We've talked a lot about the site plan stuff already. The applicant already has comments. Indefinitely just means if it's ready for September 1st, it's going to come back on the consent calendar, and at that point, we would look to schedule the public hearing. I don't think the next time, because that could be the 1st, and we could do that. If it could be the 15th, it might not be. If it's the 15th, I wouldn't schedule a public hearing that night, because we would have to, I would review the resubmission, so that we're already a month out from the 15th, so we'd be looking at the October 6th or October 20th meetings for a public hearing. Application, just tabling it indefinitely allows the applicant to say, hey, here's everything we have, it's ready, application completeness is just a consent calendar item now. The only reason we're doing it like this tonight is because you guys had tabled it until a previous approval, so then we put it on the agenda. And in that time, we changed application completeness to a consent item. If we put a date to it and it's not ready, then we're just going to keep tabling it. I wouldn't schedule a public hearing. If you guys, we can put a date to it. Like it'll come back as consent. Indefinitely just gives me and the applicant a little bit more flexibility.
Sure.
It allows them to say, we can get it by September 1st, and then we can get a review and schedule it for a planning board. I don't think I don't think it makes a huge difference. I think it gives them more flexibility.
No, I understand, and I do share Jeff's, I think his thought on is it definitely sounds like forever.
does, yeah.
We're never going to see it again, and we have no idea, we have no communication with you or anything like that. But I like deadlines as well. It gives someone a goal to work towards. But I think the conversations this evening, Tony, I think you understand what the board's looking for and the semantics of it. I guess as long as you're on the same page, that I guess when you're ready and it comes back and it's not indefinitely like we're sending you home packing forever.
Lock the door behind me.
Yeah, but is that, I mean.
Yeah, I mean,
like-
again, I think the unknown from my perspective is the solar.
Sure.
I mean, the other stuff we can address, and, I could turn that around pretty quickly. It's just, I don't know when, first off, when you're going to get a decision or an opinion from Corporation Counsel, and then what that entails in terms of getting the solar people on board to address the commercial aspect of it, or, maybe they scale it down. I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know how that's going to play out.
Yeah, okay. Joyce?
I like the term continue generally because it sounds less amorphous. But that's just me. I mean, because I've heard things continue generally.
Okay.
But whatever works.
Do you like that verbiage, Charles? Does that work for you?
I would leave it up to you guys and the applicant. I'm just saying
We understand.
it'll be coming back.
When it's ready.
Yeah, and yeah. And if you guys want to add it to the consent, if you're okay with it coming back as the consent calendar as part of this, then that's easier too. But I just wouldn't want to, I think I'm more hung up on scheduling a firm public hearing date because I'd rather just get a resubmission, all the comments, do another round of review, and then come to the planning board with a public hearing, and we'll have everything reviewed too.
Sure, and I understand. If there's an opportunity for the applicant to get the information and we can see it on a consent item for the application materials while we're still waiting for the review process with third party and staff to happen, that can happen on another date. At least the project's moving forward with completeness review. I understand. So, okay. Any additional discussion? Motion to table application completeness review indefinitely by Jim, second by Chris. Okay. Those in favor, Chris?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff? Can you hit it on the mic again?
No.
Thank you. Catherine?
Yes.
I'll vote yes. Motion passes 5-1. And you have, Tony, you have direction, thoughts, concerns. The application's, it's good. There's a lot of good information in here. I don't want to take away or have that distraction, but it's a good application. Just a few of those other, unfortunately, that big picture item, but with the solar. But other than that, it's not to take away from all the hard work you and your team have put together. So, so with that, we'll see you as soon as we can.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, thank you, sir.
Great, thank you.
All right, continuing along, our next item on our agenda this evening is item 9C, and this is 11 Eastview Parkway, Unit 103. This is map 64, lot 6-2-53, and this is a public hearing and application review for a conditional use for an automotive repair service within the Portland Road zoning district. Anything to add on this item, Charles, before we begin?
There's nothing I have on this right now. We are treating this as an after-the-fact conditional use, even though it's not currently in. We caught it before they really started fully operating with a business license, and that was through code and some other stuff as well. But they were, the applicant, who's I don't see here tonight, was really, jumped right in and be like, sorry, we weren't told that we need a conditional use application to operate an automated repair service. They quickly got their application in and provided us all of the material for this. So that's just the application background for this, and this was a previously approved industrial flex space. We had a similar conditional use for an industrial flex space a couple months ago, and it's kind of the similar situation of how we look at approving industrial flex spaces. So if we were ever to get more industrial flex spaces, we would probably condition those approvals with more of a monitoring, be specific about coming in for uses in it. There was some confusion on the staff side when it comes to permitting, that the planning board approved this as an industrial flex space, but it's just, that's not a use. That's just the building, and each individual unit has its own use, needs its own business licensing, and if it's a conditional use, it's not a blanket approval. So that's how we got here. The applicant, was working with the property owner. I think it was a leasing or subleasing situation, but they were really, I just want to emphasize that they were quickly to put an application and work with city staff to, come into compliance.
Great, thank you. Any questions for staff before we begin? Any conflicts or disclosures? All right, and, well, I guess the applicant's not with us this evening.
No, I do not see them in the
Okay.
room.
So with that, into board discussion. Thoughts, questions, comments? Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I thought the application was very, very well put together. It looks like there were a couple concerns between the fire department and the alarm system for the building, which doesn't necessarily fall on the tenant. And it seems like we've kind of covered that with the general condition of approval, which should help leverage some of the code enforcement in the fire department to get that, they think it's a wiring issue or a quality issue resolved. And then apparently the code office had some issues with the wiring, and Marcel had a very brief, but usually it's detailed enough. And I think the condition that we have drafted as number 2 summarizes that they'll address those as well. I thought everything was pretty straightforward. My only thought was, for the board, if we would consider maybe an additional condition of approval, number 5, or if we put it under 3 and then move the numbers down, maybe to add that all repair work shall take place within the enclosed building, in such, basically to minimize noise, odor, visual impacts, and the containment of the oils, lubricants, and solvents and similar products, which was listed elsewhere. Water Resource and Recovery was very proactive. They've been out, they already know that there's an oil-water separator on site, but that's going to take place within the building. So where it's kind of a mixed use, where really the Portland Road District, to me, is kind of still, even though we're allowing a lot of stuff, it's the Wild West. We have all these different things going on. If we're going to allow this type of activity there, we probably don't want cars up on jack stands and hoods up and engines being pulled out outside for that visual impact. It sounds like this applicant has a very neat type business, but I think in order of protecting all of the neighbors, we might want to consider a condition that says, hey, the repairs need to be done within the enclosure of the building. It's just my thought. So, other than that, I think we're ready to kind of process it through and grant the conditional use. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Any other thoughts from board members?
I agree with Jeff. I think with a flex space like this, there probably already are requirements as far as keeping your business within the confines of the building, but it can't possibly hurt to clarify that the repair work must be done within the building because of where the facilities to protect public health and safety are located.
Could maybe the senior members, you guys have been on a little longer, or staff, if we do this conditional use for this applicant, and he were to vacate the space, and another applicant with the exact same use comes in, do they have to reapply for a conditional use, or does it stay with the site, kind of like a site plan amendment?
So it depends on the type of sale. So if someone bought, this approval is for Thomas Miller, who is a representative of GE Motorsport. I'm pretty sure they would just, you can transfer the use, the business for GE Motorsport, and the use would carry. Because the applicant is specifically Thomas Miller of GE Motorsport, I would say that it wouldn't be, once the use ceases under its current ownership, they would have to come, the next person would need to get a conditional use approval as well. This conditional use is limited to just this applicant.
Yes, if it were to cease, right? But if this applicant were to be of retirement age and sell to somebody else, could they just continue operation?
No, because the approval's for Thomas Miller.
Okay.
So if that approval would only go to him. So even if he sold the business, it's not the approval isn't to an LLC. The applicant was an individual.
Great, thank you. Any other thoughts from board members? I guess I share your thought, Jeff, with that additional condition, and then also with the storage of, so in the same vein, the storage of vehicles out there, and that's not part of the use, correct, Charles? I mean, it's automotive repair, there's no sales. in the automotive repair doesn't allow for multiple vehicles in disrepair on long-term storage type vehicles on site, correct?
Yes. This, to the point about being specific, this is for Unit 103. So I'm also in agreement of the condition, so I've written it and I can pull that up. I also, now the second Jeff started saying that, I was like, wow, that's a good idea. The way I'm phrasing this is like, just to be clear, any activity, including storage, associated with the approved conditional use shall occur entirely within Unit 103 at 11 Eastview. Any expansion or change in use shall require planning board review and approval. I think their intent is just to have one car in, maybe two if they can fit 2 bays at a time in that unit, and not store a bunch in that site. That was not what they had kind of proposed in their conditional use. So I think that's the drafted condition that I'm happy to amend it, but I agree with Jeff on this.
Yeah, no, I think that works. I think that works for me. I think you've covered it well. Jeff?
I don't know, I'm a little bit, to give the guy I just read that any activity, you could be dropping off your car. I'm not the attorney here, but it sounds like anything that he's going to receive money for, just parking the car, then says it has to be within the building. And I guess I was trying to be clear about, I was going to use the term any repair work, so that if the car has to be out there, or if he's doing, one car, and in our day and age, he needs a transmission. He can roll it out in the yard and park it like it's a complete vehicle, not a disassembled, I think was the term you used. And if he needs to wait a week and a half to get that part, then he can roll it back in. It's still part of his business, but there's no actual repair work done being outside the confines of the building. So I just want to make sure we give a little leverage there, and I just feel like that, I don't know, I'm not an attorney, but that seems a little bit too restrictive. Everything has to be inside the building.
Sure.
Activity is a pretty broad word.
Well, yeah, and I think where Charles has put this associated with the approved conditional use of the automotive repair, I think that's where, for me, it feels like it works. I'd like to hear Joyce and Jim's thoughts as well, but I think, to your point, if there's repair begun and you're waiting on something and it moves outside for a week or so, I think that's fine. I don't think that counts as any storage. I'm thinking, I can't pay for my car, but I've got a busted boat. We take my busted boat for, and then next thing you know, there's this collection of items. I think that's what I want to try to avoid, but I don't know, Jim, Joyce, thoughts on that verbiage?
I kind of like the language, because if you get rid of the commas there, and you get rid of the words including storage, it says any activity associated with the approved conditional use shall occur entirely within the unit. So I think that really is dealing with repair work. Now, adding the word storage, I actually think it's a good idea, because I don't think it's a good idea for 1, 2, or 3 cars just sort of sitting outside of Unit 103 while they're waiting for a new transmission to be delivered. Because I think that's exactly what we want to avoid, is to have a bunch of vehicles just sort of sitting there outside waiting to be repaired. So I think, Jeff, you made a very good point. I agree with you. I think that we want to keep whatever this activity, whatever they're going to do for automotive repair, it really should be just in the building, and the outside should be, relatively clean. You shouldn't have stuff stored there, including vehicles. That's just my opinion.
So Jim, you're in support of taking out including storage in the commas, or you?
No, I guess we're accentuating the storage as being particularly important.
Okay, all All right.
right? And because I don't think we want to have cars just sitting outside that unit, waiting to be fixed. So if they're going to fix something, they can need a tow truck to bring it in, they bring it in, they put it in the building, they work on it, hopefully they can drive it out. But I don't think they should just be dropping stuff off outside the building, vehicles or anything else.
Yeah, and I think understanding that there's scheduling within a business and there's time to get parts and pieces and everything, but I think for me it's the project cars that sit for a long term. If you get into a project and you're waiting on parts for a day or so, I think that can be rotated out, moved, put back in. I don't see that as storage. I guess that's, you're not storing a vehicle, you're repairing it and it's working. But if it's long-term, I'm not sure if the definition of automobile storage is specific in our ordinance, but maybe it is. I didn't think it was, so. Chris?
Are there designated spots for Unit 103, or is it just shared parking?
So the only parking, when we were talking with the applicant, sorry, didn't mean to scroll up away from this. The only parking was for an employee or two, and that is part of the initial approval of the flex space. So that's all done through that, or that, I don't know if it's a condo association, but that's all done through that group. And this is kind of what I was alluding to with these industrial flex spaces. When you now have conditional uses come in, how do we ensure that it's consistent? If they had come in and saying, we want to be able to store cars outside, we would be looking at, more conclusive, more looking at that original site plan, because now we're changing the flex space or what that original approval back in 2023 was. So I don't think this means that they can't drop off a car, leave it outside for 15 minutes, get it in. I think they're much more, they're a smaller operation. It's hard for me to speak for them. I don't know exactly what they are doing, but the intent isn't to be like a auto repair where you leave like a VIP auto or something like that. I think they're more boutique, 1-2 cars at a time. They have a small team, so the parking would be for just for their staff, their employees, and they would be, there's no storage. There was no request for that.
Yeah, we don't want this to turn into all of their associated parking spots turn into tire storage, and that's not what we're looking for. But during the action of repairing a vehicle, if it is outside as part of a repair for a part waiting, that's fine. If you drop off your car, but you can't get in for 3 weeks, I think that's different. I think to Jim's point is, yes, I can't see you for 3 weeks, drop it off in 3 weeks, not drop it off now and sit for 3 weeks. Yeah. Jeff?
Well, my struggle comes in, and I just want it to be a real simple approach, is, the guy is trying to run a business, and we're going to leave this language to some code enforcement officer to have to go out and enforce. If we happen to have a really laid-back code enforcement officer, it's pretty vague. If we happen to have a really aggressive code enforcement officer, he can make this guy's life really difficult. And that's just where I'm having a little bit of, maybe that term disrepair that you use is important. I just wanted to capture something so that area out there where it is multi-use, multi-flex space, we don't have a whole lot of storage. I'd have to look in our zoning. I know we have very specific storage requirements for office of tradesmen, no outside staging, no outside. We don't really have, I don't think we have that, but we probably should check if we have a definition for storage.
So that's the tricky piece with your point, and I think 2 pieces in response, Jeff. I see the other side of the coin, that if we do have a car parked in, a car that they are waiting on a part for, parked in an employee spot, that's the tradesman unit. That was the initial approval. So we have very clear, we don't want all of these tradesmen's units to just be leaving stuff outside, dripping into the stormwater. So when you brought up this, a condition of making sure that it incurs, that the use is not limiting, but there's a clear bounds of it. To me, that made sense. I thought that's where you were coming from, because I look at this and say, what if they are putting tires, leaving tires outside, and then those tires get moved from here to the other side of the, like across from the bays, and the code enforcement officer doesn't have the tools to enforce that. And then you look at the original approval for this, where it was a tradesman unit, there is no outside storage envisioned. So I think, I wouldn't say this is limiting. I think there's always some nuance, some gray area in terms of how we do enforcement. I think this is more of just saying, like, if you get a shipment of tires in, they need to be stored inside. If you need to, like, if you have someone coming to pick up a car, I don't think it's going to be an enforcement issue if you need to, like, park it outside for a couple hours. It becomes an enforcement issue when that car is there 2, 3, 4 days, or taking up other unit spots, and then you have a landlord condo association, then it becomes a little bit of a civil matter, it becomes a little bit of an enforcement matter. So I think I think we're close to being on the same side, or same perspective on this. But I also hear that this isn't too restrictive, but it is for unit 103. It is only for this unit. It's not for 11 Eastview Parkway, because that got approved as a separate industrial building. So I see both sides. I also can see how this could be overly restrictive. We could add another sentence like, this should not, I look to Jim and Joyce for language, but like, this should not prevent them for like any any incidental operation of the use in I'm trying to think of a good analogy. Like, if I buy a sandwich and then from a deli and eat it outside, it's not the deli's fault, like I'm eating the sandwich outside or something, but that's not a good analogy. But
I get what you're saying, and another thought is I think this, I see this in a sense of it helps and it prevents that you get a delivery of tires every day for tomorrow. So then there are tires outside forever, because your tires that you got today are for tomorrow, and every day you get tires. This verbiage here would prevent you from doing that.
But,
Joyce.
I mean, this guy has a lease and a limited number of parking spaces. He only has the use of a total of 3 parking spaces in his lease. So, I mean, he's going to be evicted from the space if he is occupying parking spaces. I haven't read the lease well enough to know whether he's prohibited from storing stuff in parking spaces anyways. I mean, I don't know. I was happy with Jeff's original thought of just all repair work associated with their approved conditional use shall occur entirely within Unit 103. Because, drop off, pick up, I'm not worried about that, because this is a sole proprietor operating a one-man shop. He's not going to have a big backlog of cars sitting there parked because he doesn't have the parking for it. And he has a fairly strict lease that tells him how many spaces he can use and which spaces.
I see that point. I'm still worried about the time and tide wait for no one, right? That you fall behind, you get overburdened, and then you fall behind, and then the activity begins to spew and cars start to build up, and that's
And his landlord gives him a warning and boots him. I guess
But he-
after a point,
But he pays the month ahead.
Yeah, but if he's still violating the terms of the lease, that's between him and his landlord.
Sure.
I don't know. I mean, I thought your point was more odors and noises and fluids, and making sure that those are contained by being taken care of within the building.
Well, I think not speaking for Jeff, but you see this different than a VIP with tires stacked, new tires, old tires stacked on the side of the building, and air wrenches going and all of that, that it's much more of a niche use, and it's,
So I think there's two pieces here. So I just pulled up the approved site plan of it. And looking at this site plan, there is just no room for outdoor storage. So if there, for anything, so the site doesn't have it. If there was storage outside and say the neighboring lot was like, hey, this person has stuff outside, it's going into some of that setback, some of the I know there's some stormwater concerns out here, like there's a 20-foot drainage easement back here, that would be out of compliance with the site plan. And if the conditional use is kind of another level of compliance. So there's two pieces. This is a no parking area, so if they were leaving stuff down here, that wouldn't be allowed. So the landlord condo association, that would be kind of civilly enforced, which is what Joyce was talking about. Our compliance on this would be the site plan and the conditional use for that unit, and of course the other units on site as well. So if we did end up, say we took out a condition, say we took out this condition, approved it with the 4 conditions as proposed. If there was any issue with compliance, I think a code enforcer could say anything outside of unit 103 is, not that, or the site plan's out of compliance. So there's a lot of different ways to look at this in terms of enforcement. I think what we have proposed here, oh, that's the agenda, you don't need to see that. What we have proposed here, I also see it as maybe being, too strict. It might restrict it too much, and that might allow for whatever, like certain situations. But I think the intent here is to emphasize that this use is for Unit 103, and that it shouldn't be impacting other units, neighboring properties. But Jeff, what would you, because you initially proposed this and I was like, yes, I wrote this. What language would be more comfortable here for you?
Well, it'd be a lot easier if the applicant were here, we could just ask him. But I was really hoping that it would be, well, you guys all brought up very valid points, right? And you have an applicant that's trying to run a small business, and there are going to be times that he needs to push a car out to wait for something to come. Looks like there are 7 spaces for the entire building, plus 2 handicaps. So they're all valid points. I was really thinking that repairs, I didn't want to see a car with a hood up and an engine being pulled out and the fluids dripping down the driveway into the stormwater, right? I was trying to capture all of the hard work all of our departments have put forth and protect the neighbors from the noise and the odors and the visual impacts of having a repair shop there. So I was just, maybe if we just put any repair activity, including storage, I guess. I just get uncomfortable with who interprets and enforces the storage. Is it okay to have your tires dropped off at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and they stay out there until 6:30 at night and then you wheel them inside? I wouldn't think that's a particular heartburn. Somebody else might. Maybe a time constraint on how long the cars sit outside in the driveway.
I also now looking at this, I'm putting my Rosalie, Howard, Stacy, WRD hat on now. I don't think they would be comfortable with any vehicle associated with this sitting outside because we don't have, the site wasn't fully designed to be an auto repair. Part of what, led us down this path is the applicant reached out and be like, oh, what do we need for like an oil water separator? I'm looking at the rest of the site plan now. It's just a paved parking lot. So that would just be anything that was stored outside, and not that they would put a leaking car out there, but I think that would be the concern for water resource, which I'm happy that we can always go back and get it, talk to the applicant. The applicant's not here, but yeah, that's just the water resource site design hat that I'm just now putting on.
Any repair activity?
Yeah, I had cut and pasted some of Charles's terminology, and the whole intent of what I was asking for was to minimize noise, odor, visual impacts, and containment of oils, lubricants, solvents, and similar products. That was my intent. Make sure it's inside. The repair activity takes place inside. But if we go down some sort of a path, I think is appropriate.
Yeah, so if we add the repair into that activity, I think that still captures it as well. And I think furthermore is making sure that they understand that these conditions, this conditional use doesn't supersede any of the site plan stuff. We're further reiterating that all the site plan conditions that someone might not be as familiar with, that here we're sort of saying it again, the belt and suspenders that we like to try to do, that where any repair activity, including storage, associated with this conditional use has to happen inside. So I think I think belt and suspenders. I like the storage piece, like Jim said, we're emphasizing the storage, that just because of this conditional review doesn't allow this use to store a bunch of stuff outside. Chris?
I can definitely see Jeff's point. I think it is a little restrictive for the business, but I think the restriction fits the application. In a perfect world, they'd be able to store vehicles, do whatever they want to maximize their effectiveness with their business. With this particular site, it just looks like doesn't work, you know what I mean? If they had designated spots and it was like, all right, you can do whatever you want in this spot, whether it's storing a car, tires, whatever, that'd be one thing. It seems like it's most to be a flexible parking situation. Their lease says they get X number of spaces. If the landlord's like, yep, you can store a car there for a week, we don't care as long as it's not leaking, whatever, it looks like you could drive it off, whether you can or not, that's up to the landlord. But I think just giving the clarity of the intent is this is shared parking, whether you have a lease or not. So I do think it's restrictive, but I don't think there's a way to get around that necessarily.
All right, thank you, Chris. Catherine, did you have a question?
Well, Jeff had mentioned, which I was thinking, like, if a car's done, putting it in one of his 3 spots, because I think he mentioned he's going to be the only employee. If we say no overnight storage, like if he's done in the morning and somebody's coming in the afternoon, saying no overnight storage might fix that. And the other thing I was going to bring up is this was noticed as a public hearing.
Yes.
I don't think we've done.
We haven't done that yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the reminder.
But yeah, if we say no overnight storage, or I don't know how to word saying fixed cars only can sit outside, but I mean, I can see that happening in a lot of instances.
Yeah, I guess circling back to maybe a final resolution on it, but I think I don't really see or define storage as a day or so. It's sort of the storage is this continued activity
Right.
of the same reoccurring.
So no long-term storage? No long-term vehicle storage? I don't know if that leaves open, you can store tires outside, I don't.
Yeah, that's what we wouldn't want. So, Charles, back to that condition, if it says any automotive repair activity, including storage,
I want to bring up the definition for automotive repair services, which reads an establishment that is primarily engaged in doing vehicle repair work to make repairs to render a motor vehicle serviceable. Such repair work includes, but is not limited to, maintenance, care, repair, or refinishing of motor vehicles, including paint, body mechanic, or auto upholstery work, and car washes. If that is the use for Unit 103, that is the application, my initial response to when Jeff brought this up is that this condition is not needed. That was my gut reaction to it, and then my follow-up was like, this makes sense so that it doesn't impact the site plan. This use only speaks to the repair of the vehicle, so when we say any activity, storage is technically not part of that. use. The use is automotive repair services. If we're concerned about storage outside, inside, that's a site plan concern. I think I think we may be kind of looking into how the site functions rather than just how this unit functions. But really, this is I think if there's an issue with the site in terms of compliance stemming from this use, then we would need a site plan amendment that can accompany this. If that makes sense, I don't necessarily know if we need to get in the weeds on this condition. I do see the concerns, but because this is specifically for Unit 103, the use would be for that. And I think we're getting into some of the gray areas to jump back to the initial thing, like what if we have a code officer who's lax or too strict? You could have the strictest code officer in the world and they'll find something, I'm sure, with anything. And with a lax one, it could be the opposite of that. So I think the way we're looking at this specific condition may just be overcooking it, if that makes sense.
A little bit. I can see that side.
I mean, it's difficult not having the applicant here. I double checked that he was on, we typically send it via email when we send out the agenda, and he was included on that.
My big concern is just making sure that it's understood and it's clear that just because it's an automotive repair, that there isn't this preconceived notion of, hey, I need a place to store my tires. I'm going to store them in that one parking spot that I get, or, this or that, or where am I going to store my transmission delivery for the car that's coming in on Tuesday and it shows up Monday and I don't have any room in my shop. I'm going to leave it in that parking spot. Those are the pieces and parts that
So
I know is going to happen.
Yeah, I feel that we're talking a little bit in circles, so I think we have a couple options. We can look at finalizing the language for this condition of approval, remove this conditional approval, or table this application, and if we tabled it, I would be, what questions do you have for the applicant to make a decision on this? Or questions for staff in terms of what would be helpful, just to kind of keep things moving along.
Sure. So can we, Jeff, what are your thoughts? Are we say any automotive repair activity associated with the approved conditional use shall occur entirely within the unit, 103 at Eastview, and then we throw in a blanket statement, no outdoor storage shall be included as part of this conditional use. And then we, unfortunately, it puts us back to the code officer and enforcement, but where automotive repair services that you were concerned about, and then we're hitting in a separate statement, no outdoor storage. Just where we're being clear, no outdoor storage as part of this conditional use. We're just double hitting it. I don't know.
Yep. I mean, I think that would be very close. I would maybe just change it to any automotive repair or service activity. So we differentiate between the two, and then I think it summarizes everyone's concerns.
Is that Jim? Yeah. Sorry, Button.
While we're pondering that, how about if we open the public hearing? So I'll move to open the public hearing.
I will second that.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion on opening the public hearing on this item? All right, those in favor, Chris?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes?
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 6-0 to open the public hearing on this item. If anyone is with us this evening that would like to speak on this item, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, and we will collect comments and address them accordingly.
Mr. Chair, seeing no member of the public wishing to speak tonight on this item, I move to close the public hearing.
I would second that motion.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion on the motion to close a public hearing on this item? All right, those in favor, Chris?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 6-0. All right, back to the board. Condition number 5, any other thoughts, comments, edits? Catherine?
I have a procedural question. If the applicant isn't okay with this, do they have a remedy? Like, can they appeal? Because normally
Yes,
they're here, so,
that would be the process. They would appeal,
okay,
or they would ask you to reconsider.
okay, thank you.
Jeff?
With that, Mr. Chair, I move that we add a condition of approval number 5, reading any automotive repair or related service activity within the approved conditional use shall occur entirely within unit number 103 at 11 Eastview Parkway. No storage shall be allowed outside of unit number 103. Any expansion or change in use shall require planning board review and approval.
I'll second.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Joyce. Any additional discussion to add condition of approval number 5 as written? All right, those in favor, Chris?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 6-0 to add condition number 5.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we adopt the findings of fact and the amended conditions of approval for 11 Eastview Parkway, Unit 103.
Thank you for the motion, Jim.
Second.
Second by Joyce. Any additional discussion on the motion to adopt the findings of fact and amended conditions of approval? All right, those in favor, Chris?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 6-0.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we grant a conditional use approval for automotive repair services for 11 Eastview Parkway, Unit 103.
I would second that.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion? All right, those in favor, Chris?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 6-0. All right.
Mr. Chair, can we take a short break before the next item?
Sure, we'll take a 5-minute recess before our next item. We will continue our applications this evening with our next item, item 9D. This is 0 Ricker Road, map 101, lot 25, and this is an application of completeness review. This is a contract zone petition to allow the construction of a new wireless telecommunications facility, and this is within the Rural Conservation Zoning District. Charles, anything to add on this item before we begin?
Yeah, so a few things right off the top, just in terms of process for zoning amendments. I know that we had one recently. The planning board's role is to ultimately provide a recommendation, either for or against the contract zone. This has already gone as a new business item to council on August 3rd. And then, if accepted tonight, we would look at scheduling a public hearing. There's a couple other things about this application that make it unique rather than just being, contract zones are allowed in our ordinance as written today. There's also, because this is a wireless carrier telecommunications tower request, there are federal laws under this. So we reference Federal Regulation 47, Section 1.60003, or 003, sorry. And then there's also just generally the Wireless Telecommunications Act, which we didn't provide a full review of under this, but there is a specific timeline established in this for review. That is 150 days from the date of application, which was June 25th. And I believe the 150th day would be November 23rd. So ultimately, the city council would need to make a decision by November 23rd. There are some nuances to tolling periods for additional review that pause the shot clock, requests for extension. Those are all plausible, and if needed, we will look at that working with our attorney and the applicant team. So I just want you to be aware of the federal regulations. And then going forward from this, if the application would be accepted, we would have a public hearing. You guys would be able to schedule a site walk if deemed necessary. And then this will also, ultimately you would make that recommendation to city council. Once that recommendation be made, city council would also have a public hearing on the contract zone, which they would make the final determination. That is just, the general overview. Happy to answer questions about the process. I will advise that this is for application completeness review. I know that earlier tonight for application completeness review, I said since we have the applicant here, you can ask questions. I think for the sake of this application tonight, we stick to application completeness and save, contract zone reviewing questions. So if you have questions that require further documents or more information, that phrase it in a way where you are, requesting more information as it relates to the application completeness. I tried to be a little bit more detailed in the application completeness of each specific item. The final piece I wanted to talk about tonight is that last section, additional planning board conditions or restrictions. While it is listed as a application requirement, there are no, obviously, this is the first time you guys are discussing those conditions or restrictions now. Just to be aware that the planning board can propose additional conditions or restrictions over the scope of the review. So if there's things that come up when you want to make a recommendation to the planning board that amends the contract zone language, or you have the applicant come back with a revised contract zone, any conditions to the contract zone, restrictions to the contract zone, that's well within the planning board's authority. So I think that's all, but happy to answer any high-level process questions now before we jump into application completeness and give the applicant the opportunity to speak.
Sure. And then, again, application of completeness this evening, and then the potential date for September 15th for continued review or for review and application of a public hearing.
That'd be for public hearing application review, yes.
All right, thank you. Any questions for staff? Jeff?
You can go.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I just need to be clear because my mind almost automatically goes into application completeness for site plan. We are actually looking at what the applicant has provided to us and comparing it to Article 230-705, correct? To make sure that our responsibility in 230-705, the material that they provided can answer those questions?
Yeah, 230, this application is specific to the contract zone as established through 230-1705. And as public comment noticed earlier, there are specific state statutes related to this as well. There's that as well. I just closed the memo real quick. This application, the applicant material did provide a full site plan layout and design because that's a required submittal underneath the contract zone. We are going to be reviewing this, and we are sending this out to third-party reviewers for telecommunication frequency and structural review, just because that's an important piece of contract zoning and siting. But specific site plan standards and the performance, or what's the word I'm looking for in zoning? The performance standards for a wireless telecommunications facility will be part of site plan.
Correct.
And as it relates to the federal regulations, that will be a separate shot clock as well.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because I didn't want to encompass too many things that I felt like might have been missing in application completeness, but we're really sticking to the criteria of 230-1705.
Sure, those 8 items. Yes. Any other questions for staff before we begin?
I think that might have answered it, because I had a question under 23725, wireless telecommunication facilities, towers, and antennas. Because that's like a separate list of some things that are required. Can we also, in this review, ask about those?
Let me just pull them up. No, I do not believe so, because those are related to the conditional use of the telecommunications facility and for the site plan operation for it. So there are some things that are in there. So while you're reviewing the contract zone, our ordinance, for example, says, provide a height limit. That could be a condition or restriction that comes up over the course of the review. I think a lot of these, you're not going to be making a finding on these. So they may come up while you're talking about the contract zone, because some of these do relate to siting. You do have some of the material. There are some things that cross over between this and the contract zone. But for the most part, the planning board's focus is to be making that recommendation to city council based off of 1705. And I can find the section for those, for section F. So the planning board, and I can pull this up as well, rather than just read it.
Yeah, because my question was about things, like this lists a couple things that should be sort of included in the application, and I was wondering if we could request them as well.
So no, you would be required, you're bound to, the planning board for their applications are bound to 230-1705C.
Okay.
Those 8 items.
Yeah, as it comes to application completeness. Over the course review, you may be able to have questions, the applicant may answer it, they may not have to, because the site plan, zoning standards, the planning board's required to make findings on those as part of that application. That will be a future application.
Okay.
So the standards here are these four in section F. And so this is in 230-1705.
And this discussion would be on a separate evening?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and you will make findings on these as part of your recommendation.
Yes.
And just to read it a little further, a favorable recommendation to the council requires a positive finding on all 4 standards.
Joyce?
Mr. Chair, I need to recuse myself because the owner of the underlying property is my mom's estate, and I'm one of the personal representatives. So just wanted to
Yes.
get that out of the way before we move
Before
on.
we begin, yes, thank you. You're recused.
Thank you, Charles.
Any other questions for staff before we begin? Any additional thoughts, comments, conflicts, disclosures? All right, and with that, we'll invite the applicant up.
Thank you very much, members of the board. I appreciate your time. I'm Gordon Smith. I'm an attorney at Verrill, Portland, representing the applicant Tower Co. I mean, I think our application speaks for itself. I don't want to, go off on unnecessary tangents that the board is not interested in. I saw some of the public comment that I could respond to if the board is interested in. If this is just a question of completeness, I think as the planner's memo indicates that we've submitted a complete application and we would look forward to, I'm happy to answer any questions on the application, but look forward to a public hearing scheduling and site walk and further deliberation.
All right, great, thank you. Board members, any questions for the applicant regarding the application of completeness this evening? Jeff?
If we could, Mr. Chair, part of the application is the request as to why it's being located here. And I know there was a bunch of, radio frequency analysis data. Do we know the typical radius at this height on flat terrain, typical radius of how much area a tower can typically serve in miles?
I mean, if you asked a radio frequency engineer that question, they probably wouldn't give you an answer. But
Okay.
I think as a just kind of total, off, like just rule of thumb, 2 to 3 miles.
I guess my other questions, maybe for Charles, I have questions with regards to part of, the request for the proposal. The reason that they're pointing out is in how it aligns with our comprehensive plan, the need to expand emergency services. Who do we ask for? I think it's important that we know, have our police, fire, DPW, and wastewater, have they weighed in? Are there gaps in the municipal services? Because they're offering municipal attachment space on this tower.
Yeah, so I'll just refer to the memo here that these materials have been sent to all city departments for review, and we've also sent it out to our peer reviewers for review. And as part of that review, we're going to be reviewing kind of all of these documentations. So obviously we have our attorney working on this, we have a structural engineer, and we do have a RF radio frequency engineer who's expert in these types of stuff. So we're going to be having all of these documents provided and reviewed so that the planning board can, look at all of these. So while I think we have an example here that, one of the required submittals is the description of the property's unusual nature or unique location. I don't think a completeness application is the opportunity to verify whether or not how true or how complete that is as it relates. It's whether or not they've kind of made that claim and what their claim is. What the planning board job will be is to, discuss that over the course of the contract zone review, and city staff and our third-party peer reviewers will provide that context. So when it comes to, and again, as with most of my memos, I do go into detail about all of these things, how, what the applicant says, what the comp plan says, and try to review that to help you guys make your decision.
Yeah, so good question to work through and review, but as far as that information being provided or a statement on it within the application of completeness, we have that, I guess, right? That's what you're, shaking head, yeah.
So, yeah, so we have time, we can find his application complete, we can schedule a public hearing, more importantly, we can schedule our site walk. I'm assuming we can make a request at that time to have an elevated balloon at the 130-foot height, so we have a sense of what the exposure would be. And then we can work through our peer reviews to try to determine if we can answer all 4 questions as needed to present a recommendation to council.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess at that point, I feel like their application for all the other items is sufficiently complete, is my opinion. I'd like to hear what the rest of the board has. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other thoughts or questions from board members? Jim?
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we find the application complete.
I'll second that.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Chris. Any additional discussion on the motion to find the application complete? All right, those in favor, Chris?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to find the application complete. So with that, Charles, we have a recommendation of a public hearing date for September 15th. Did I get that correct?
Yes.
And with that, scheduling a site walk, would the board like to schedule a site walk on this item as well? Nods all around. So with that, 15th, if I can jump to my calendar quickly enough here. Can we meet that morning and then see this item later in the day? And I think I had some of the same thoughts that Jeff had, so with an opportunity to receive comments from staff and third-party reviewers, if we have that, those packets go out, by the end of the week on the 11th. We should have that by Tuesday and have an opportunity to see some of the input from staff members and then have that for our site walk. Does that make sense? Does that date work for board members?
So it's the 15th for the site walk?
15 for the site walk. We like to do those in the mornings if that works for the applicant. And then we would have the public hearing later in the afternoon.
Yep, that's fine.
Does the 7:30, 8 o'clock range work for folks? I think the last,
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock?
8.
I guess with that, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we schedule the public hearing for September 15th, 2026. And we also schedule the site walk that morning of September 15th at 8 a.m.
I'll second that.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Chris. Any additional discussion on the motion to schedule a public hearing on this item for September 15th, along with a site walk on the same day, 8 a.m. that morning?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
there was a mention of having the balloon float coincide with the site walk.
Yes.
So I just wanted to say, that's weather dependent. If they can't do the balloon float if it's windy,
Sure.
basically, or raining, or overcast, or whatever.
Sure. Yeah, it's a great tool that the board has seen used successfully in the past to show height and stuff. So if that's if we can take advantage of that opportunity, weather dependent.
Would be happy to accommodate that if it's possible.
Sure.
I also don't know if I think the 8 a.m. time would work for the balloon float. It's fine for me, but I need to confirm that would be
Sure.
okay for that.
Yeah. And I guess let
Yeah.
Charles know.
I'll reach
if
out to
there's
you
any
tomorrow
issues.
because there's other pieces we like to see in the site walk. I know this isn't a site plan necessarily, but because we have it, we would like to see things flagged, the property, the location of the use flagged, and we'll reach out and provide some more context. If we are doing it on the 15th, we would just need to notice it by the 4th of September, with Lisa. But we'll talk tomorrow. I'm sure we can get an answer before the end of the week. But for right now, we'll keep that scheduled. We'll notice it. And if there's anything, if anything changes, we have a planning board meeting on the 1st.
Yes.
Yes, which is the notice date, not the 4th. It's the 1st. But we'll, I was looking at August. But yeah, I'll be able to make that announcement at the September 1st meeting if we do need to move it.
Okay. Any other thoughts or questions from board members? Jeff?
I know we're in the middle of the motion, but if they can discuss where we appropriate to park.
Yeah,
and where
we put that
interest-
in the notice and we'll
Yep.
send it out to the planning board.
Great, thank you. All right, any other comments, discussion items? All right, those in favor? Chris?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well, motion passes 5-0.
And Chair, just for our records, because a member has recused herself, it would just, I believe, would just be 5-0, no abstentions. I believe, I'll just double check, just for our record keeping purposes. So when in our minutes, it will reflect that
5.
5.
Yes.
I just want to put that as, that's how we will record
Sure,
it.
yeah, I've counted them 5-0 with Joyce having recused herself, yeah. All right, great. We'll see you
Thank you very
15th.
much. I
Thank you.
appreciate your time.
Mr. Chair, should we discuss like other items? I mean, I know you said it's going out to staff. Do you want some of our concerns or, 'cause we have the shot clock, right, that's ticking, and I just kind of hate to.
Yeah, I'm happy as long as anything that your kind of questions that you have on the application, I'm happy to take. Yeah.
Okay. Does that make sense, Mr. Chair, to list them now, or?
Well, sorry, hold on one moment. Let me gather let me organize just for a moment. Well, I typically like to err on the side of caution to not go through too much of, because we're not site planning this. That's not what we're asked to do here for the contract zone petition. So I think if there's comments that perhaps the applicant could be sure to, really stress upon, I think that would be fine. But I just want to make sure that we're not site planning it now, that we're reviewing it under the contract zone portion of our ordinance, that's all. Does that make sense?
I mean, I think it does, but you know me, I tend to come from a technical angle, and I'm going to ask our peer review
Yeah.
questions that I think are answering my 4 questions that I need to make a determination on my reference to council.
Yeah, I think now that I was more cautious when it was application completeness.
Sure.
But now as the application has been complete is under review. So if there's anything that, any questions you want answered, any concerns you have, I probably wouldn't have the applicant come up, but you can send them to me. I can make sure that our reviewers touch upon it. Any questions, I wouldn't go too much into it right now because we don't have the full review yet. But if there's any questions you have at this stage, I'm happy to write them down and make sure we have them, because I'd rather just get them out now and have an answer for you at the public hearing.
Sure. Go ahead.
So one of them was the mission of our comp plan states that internet service to households in the area, and part of the applicant is saying that this provides a needed increase in our public safety, which is part of our comprehensive plan. We also had a pretty big motion from the state to fiber to rural areas. Can we get a sense of how many homes in this area, this target area, are already have availability, fiber on the poles? I think that would be an important piece to evaluate for that type of coverage. I also thought that it might be helpful to, one, get our department heads review. We know wastewater uses a SCADA system. You know, the fire department obviously has multiple bands, and along with the PD and Public Works, as well as the street lighting system. Are there any gaps in those systems? And is that something that the peer review could be looking at? I mean, if there are no gaps in those systems, what's the advantage of this being brought into the equation, and how is that improving our public safety? Or is there a very large gap? The other question I had is, you know, is there a map that the peer review, the radio frequency peer review, is going to show that there is adequate coverage on other carriers? I know that there was some reference of how the court views that, but I think it's important to know if there's sufficient coverage on multiple other carriers there. You know, is it just a matter of putting another pizza shop in so they can deliver within 15 minutes of pizza shop, you know, versus truly increasing public safety and service to that area? And then most of the other items that I have, I believe, are going to be site plan very specific, and we would deal with that after, if they go through the condition, when that review comes. So those were kind of the key things, that if we're paying third-party consultants, if we can understand some of the benefits, and maybe they could give some clarification to, it sounds like the tower company is the host. They have one entity, one carrier that wants to attach now. They're offering municipal space attachment for no lease fee. Are they also providing like the emergency power that would be required for emergency systems from that one generator, or are we going to be looking at having multiple generators at this site? Because that would then start to work into some site plan stuff as well. But is that emergency power source provided? So, that was the items I had. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Any other thoughts or concerns from board members that we can ask staff to work through? Chris?
There was a mention from a public comment about potential health concerns. I don't know what would be the best way to make sure that those concerns get addressed, whether it's just a blanket, there's no evidence, or there is, or whatever.
Great, thank you. Any other thoughts for staff? All right, great. Thank you, Charles. You'll work through that with staff. Thank you for the applicant. We'll see this item again on the 15th. All right, so moving along with our agenda, item 10, general correspondences. As we, and Lisa, could we note for the record that Joyce is joining us for the last few items? Any additional general correspondences?
No, only the one in the packet.
All right, thank you. Item 11, planning department updates and discussion items. Anything?
So I only have two items for you guys, two updates tonight. And I just wanted to make sure I said them correctly. There are there's one minor site plan application that I determined to be a minor site plan. And all these can be found online. So this application is for Ram Island. The applicant is the University of New England. They're doing a minor site plan review for the installation of a boardwalk in the Resource Protection Overlay District. And it's a very minimal site plan. I think it's less than 1,000. They're just putting like metal boardwalks so that they can disturb less of the resource protection zone as they go out there. So we're reviewing that as a minor site plan. And just for this, the reason I'm reporting this is if there's any minor site plan where the planning board feels that it does not constitute, it would go to the planning board, and that also applies to the 30 business, we have a 30 business day period where we send out a receipt of application that this is a minor site plan. If anyone does not want it, if anyone wants it to be reviewed by the planning board, they may. So I just wanted to let you guys know that we're reviewing that one as a minor site plan, and then we received a home daycare. I wouldn't say home, I want to be clear, it's a family child care provider at 4 Lily Lane in the Rural Conservation District. So we're reviewing that as a minor conditional use as well. So we don't need a response now. If you guys do want to look at it, all of our application has been posted on our website. And I know that I was in San Diego last Tuesday, but I did watch the planning board meeting. You all did great at your training. And shout out to the team, the city staff, and our attorney to providing a really great and thorough training. I think you guys asked really great questions. So thanks for that. And I also, Lauren referenced it last week, our website is under construction. I'm hoping to finish it by the end of this week, and kind of taking out a lot of the bloat that had accumulated on the website over the last 10 years or so, and making it a more streamlined website that's a little bit more accessible, a little bit more direct in terms of what we're doing. And I did just kind of want to go over it just real quick for you so you guys are aware. It used to be a little bit more hectic up front. We kind of have rearranged this, direct to the boards and committees the planning department looks at. We're going to be updating all these too, so that if you click on the planning board website, the first thing that comes up is your meeting agendas, and you can find it right here. As you scroll down, you can see it's kind of grown. There's a lot of different things, so I'm going to clean this up just to make it more of a useful, accessible site. So I've been working with our communications department to do that. One other thing to note is that we now have like a development review platform area, so that we have the development review, learn more about the development review process. So for folks who get a notice and they don't know what's going on, they can look in to get a high level review of that. Again, it links to our projects under review page, which has all of our projects, all of the project documents on our website here. And then we also have our application. So you'll start seeing these in the coming months, our new application form, all of our new application documents. It's supposed to make it a little bit more easy for staff, easy for the applicant, just a new look for the planning department application, just so we have more clear information. And then you'll also start seeing an updated checklist, which is very similar to the one in our document, but it's a little bit more specific about what type of plans we're asking for, what types of, are they submitting a waiver for this, and making sure it maps our ordinance. So being a little bit more clear about all of this up front. So if someone's looking at our checklist, they're putting this together, we're not scrambling. So it's just updating that, and then some submission deadlines. And then we're looking to add some more location of all of our maps, some data as well. So this is just a pretty general cleanup of our website, trying to make it a little bit more accessible from the planning department, but also making it so you don't have to click 1,000 different links to get to the planning board agenda or the projects under review, because it's difficult. I have 40 bookmarks. So it's easy for me, but I think for the folks who get a notice and it's their first time interacting, what I've heard from folks over the last 9 months, it's how do I know when an agenda is posted? How do I get into it? So we're trying to make the whole website a little bit more fluent, a little bit more accessible. So it'll be hopefully finished by the end of this week or next week. And if you guys have any thoughts, any suggestions, just let me know.
Great, thank you, Charles. Jumping back for a moment to the minor site plan, Ram Island Uni Boardwalk, you said it was 1,000 feet of boardwalk, is that?
Less than 1,000 square feet.
Less than 1,000 square feet.
They're just putting, they're not even permanent structures because there's no soil there. It's just like metal things that are clamped to like a metal boardwalk. So that because they have a little research building out there, so it's to just give them more access without disturbing more of the site.
Sure. And that's, is it a permanent boardwalk or is it a seasonal boardwalk? Does it matter?
I think it's permanent.
Okay.
I think the intent is to have it be permanent.
And then the home, family, childcare, that was minor conditional use, you said?
Yes.
And that, is that relevant to any of the new statutes that are coming into play, or is
No,
that- it's just a regular
that will
Saco
be
conditional
permitted
use?
by right. So when we do our changes, technically, there was a 4-week period where it was permitted by right before LD 2173 kicked in, but we didn't get any applications on, so we didn't have to deal with it. So by July 1st, we have to make those changes, and one of those changes is to allow family child care providers, so less than 12 kids, by right in wherever residential is allowed. It might be wherever single family is allowed. I'm not quite sure on the nomenclature right now, but I think it's going to be allowed by right. So
Okay.
it's not going to be a conditional use. It's just going to be code.
Permitted use.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, any questions for staff on planning updates? Chris?
For the childcare, does that require, or does it matter whether they do it within the existing structure or if it's for a new structure?
It's a home, if it's its own facility, it's a separate use. So family child care is in their own home, less than 12. But this one in particular is a home occupation, and that's why it can be reviewed as a minor. But if they were doing like a new building, that might be a minor site plan, or it'd be just a, planning board site plan. But that depends on there's like 3 different, in our ordinance, there's 3 definitions for childcare, depending on the size, if it's a home occupation, or if it's just like its own daycare entity, like Kids Go Eco, for example.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll continue to our next item. Any planning board comments? Item 12. All right, well, seeing none, we will move to adjourn at 8:43 PM. Thank you, everyone.